And what was the name of this castle?
This is Old Wick, they call it, Auldwick. But Harold's Tower was what it was called initially, because he was Harold the Viking who came here. He's also the one who married into the Sinclairs. So this is the beginning of your Caithness Sinclair story.
Right.
Dave and Shirley, where have you been? Down the road we go again. Trekking their way through the USA, boondocking while docking in the Taipei.
In this episode, we travel up the Scottish East Coast to Wick, where we're going to finally start our journey to the Sinclair clan history in northern Scotland. The former Viking settlement of Wick is the principal town in the far north of the mainland. The town sits astride the River Wick, stretching along both sides of Wick Bay, and holds the claim to fame of being one of the busiest herring ports in Europe in the mid-19th century. The remains of the castle Old Wick, often referred to as Old Man of Wick, sits atop the edge of the cliffs and a half-mile south of Wick Bay and overlooks the sea. This is where the Sinclairs and the Vikings meet up in one of the oldest castles left in Scotland.
Now, most of the Sinclairs from down this way were miners. The miner as in minor Sinclairs in position.
Oh.
They weren't the clan chieftains. Clan chieftains were basically the areas that we're going today.
As we turned down a rocky, ruddy dirt lane along a fence that looked like it was 400 or 500 years old, all made out of hand-stacked stone, I wondered, what's coming up here? We're heading towards the ocean. And there it was. And what was the name of this castle?
This is Old Wick, they call it, Auldwick. But Harold's Tower was what it was called initially, because he was Harold the Viking who came here. He's also the one who married into the Sinclairs. So this is the beginning of your Caithness Sinclair story.
Right. Cool.
And also the oldest castle in Scotland, they say. They believe from archaeology, they couldn't find any steps or anything that had to do with steps. But they think that they had like a type of rope mechanism thing for getting in and then pulling it back up so the enemy couldn't get in.
Right.
And that was again another part of the protection. The
American Indians sometimes did the same thing. They would live up high on a butte that had no way to get up there, and they would have like rope ladders, and then they'd pull the ladders up. If they were under siege by other tribes.
Yeah.
Same.
And it's same thing, because they'd be under siege from always, I think, at that stage. He died in battle down there where we end today, at that end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that is cool. I'm going to walk down here and take...
I like the rock in it. I mean, it's had some preservation work done on it, but it's that's what we have.
Whoa, that's a long way down. You definitely don't want to get anywhere near the edge of that one. That is just too cool. This is what's left of the oldest castle in Scotland. That's what she said. Ooh.
It almost looks like this, where the castle is on the finger, as in it looks like there's water or a gulch on the other side.
There is. She said it all comes around there to where it's hard to get to it to begin with, but the only way they could get up inside of it was, a rope. Now, is that a gorgeous picture or what? Wow, North Sea, the wind coming off that water is cold. What an adventure. She was saying these used to be bunkers during World War II. Oh, look, it's kind of coming apart. But this was a bunker during World War II. I guess they had ammo and guns up here, and because that's the North Sea, and if anybody came marauding this way, that's where they'd have to attack them. Wow, waves are up down there.
A lot of them are climbed from the cliffs. So a couple of weeks ago, they were covered in birds.
Yeah.
Absolutely covered. Coffins have gone early this year. Mum and dads all fly out and go out to the float in rafts in big groups out in the Atlantic for the winter. Leave the babies, feed them up, and leave them. And it takes them about 2 or 3 weeks into mid-August to get up the strength and the courage to flip off the rocks and down, flop into the water, and away they go too.
And they just float around on the water in the winter?
Yeah.
Gosh.
In thousands of them form a big raft, and they just float around. No one seems to know what the rationale is for it.
Yeah.
They must do their fishing or something together and keep warm, probably, because freezing. Why you'd choose there and not go into an inlet somewhere?
Yeah. As we continue on into the town of Wick, we can see on the right side here that there's just thousands of grave markers in a huge cemetery. There's no telling what stories those headstones would tell. Now we're still on the A9 heading north, and we're going to be coming into Wick, which is a pretty good sized town in the county of Caithness. And this is the county that was basically the traditional land of the Sinclairs. So there's a lot to be discovered about Sinclair and the family tree.
These are very old areas along here. This spot, well, it's along the old road, the original road in. And up to the right area behind there is Pulteney Town. And it's where the whiskey distillery is.
Not really knowing where we were going next, we were quite surprised when our guide took us to the Sinclair Mausoleum at the Church of Scotland.
Now we're shortly coming to this mausoleum. What we do is walk in the grounds, walk up behind it, and basically try looking in.
Church of Scotland, Wick, St. Francis, I guess. There's supposed to be a lot of old stuff in here, yeah. Tombstones. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful building. Yep. Uneven steps, so we gotta be careful back here. Yeah, 1867, 37 years old.
This is the piece I was talking about. This is the mausoleum. Gentleman's just told me some interest. Would you like to tell the group?
Well, we've had to close it up because there's a lot of tree roots in there, and somebody trips, it's dangerous. But what we discovered last week, a gentleman who's a teacher in the high school, he had been doing research and he said there should be some stones lying in there, so there's a big pile of stones there. So what we're going to do next week is clear all this out, and then we're going to lay the stones out to see just what exactly, because he has a photograph of it.
But anyway, this is the Sinclair Mausoleum, the aisle. Have a look. You're basically having to peer in, but it's not safe to go.
Do you see there's metal?
Oh, the metals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that was lifted up several years ago. That's where they were buried.
Oh.
That was lifted up several years ago.
How many were buried in there?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Not really.
That's interesting. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Oh, isn't that cool? He was saying that several years ago, you see the metal hoop in the rock? He was saying they picked those up. See, there's 4 of them, and there's people buried in there.
Oh.
They didn't know how many. But
Oh, where the handle is?
yeah, there's like 4 handles.
Like vaults.
Yeah, and they picked them up a couple years ago, and there was bodies in there.
Just put them back down?
Yeah, they didn't.
Still bury people in the ground.
Yeah, he didn't know how many. Just that they saw that it was a burial spot, so they closed it back up. So, but it's supposed to be Sinclair's buried in there. Luckily, not me. It's just old.
What happened was,
Let me show you something. I was talking to the old guy, and he was telling me that in this mausoleum, there's a bunch of Sinclairs buried in here. But if you look in there, do you see the handles, like metal handles? There's 4 of them.
Yeah.
They a couple years ago picked that up, and yes, there was bodies in there, so they put it back down. Yeah, they didn't go any further than that, but
Oh, cool.
but there were Sinclairs. I guess they had paid, and some Sinclair had paid money. This is what she's talking about. They paid money to have it fixed up, but
Yeah.
don't know where the
Nobody
money
knows
is,
where the
and
money
they never fixed it up. As you can see, I don't think they go in there much.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go inside. So that was quite interesting. I hope you could understand him and hear what he was saying, that that had been picked up and there was bodies in there. That's where they had buried some Sinclairs.
The Sinclairs, being landowners, years ago, landowners had to build a church and maintain it to hold all the people in the area. That was their job.
Yeah.
When the minister left, on the cradle roll, the new minister, and then
Well, I want to get a picture of it too, but
I love the one that
oh wow, look at this pipe organ.
This used to be locally known as the Sinclair Isle.
What was that?
This old church of Fergus is locally known as the Sinclair Isle.
Oh,
Look at that.
that's cool. Look at that there. It's like a baptismal or something?
Font. Well, animals used to drink out of it,
Oh,
but I think it is a baptismal font now.
yeah. That's neat. This is beautiful.
It's very unique.
Yes. Pipe organ is something else, isn't it?
churches in North of Scotland, width of it. No pillars.
Yeah.
What holds it up? Beams like this.
Oh yeah. Big wooden beams.
How they got them up, I do not know. I don't know.
There's, you think, how did they do that in the old days without any mechanized tools,
No cranes.
Yeah.
Years ago, I was saying downstairs, years ago the landowners had to build a church and maintain it big enough to hold people in the locality. When the minister retired or died or whatever, moved away somewhere else, the landowners were the big chiefs, A nice young man, he'll do fine. He'll be in the pulpit. Congregation had no say whatsoever. This was happening all over Scotland. So eventually at the annual convention of ministers, I hope they're not at the fisticuffs, but it was near that stage. This is not odd.
now you're coming, people would break the carpets and stones up.
Very cool church. They really keep it nice inside. They try to keep it clean out here, but boy, this stuff is old. Could be Sinclair relatives in there. Don't know. Back on the bus. Thanks for coming along with us today as we visit the Old Wick Castle, which is the oldest castle in Scotland, along with the Church of Scotland and the Sinclair Mausoleum. In our next episode, we're going to hit the big one. We're finally going to hit my bucket list number 1. So come along for the ride as down the road we go, a little farther north in Scotland.